Chad Powers is a Hulu series based on the Eli Manning skit starring Glenn Powell as both Chad Powers and Russ Holiday. It's mildly funny, but it's also half of a show. Michael Waldron said they want to do 3 seasons. I think they could do at least 2, but the show just ends really abruptly and not in a way where it feels like you've reached any kind of conclusions. I really like Glenn Powell as an actor, and his performance is the saving grace of this show. The show kind of relies on a lot of just him being kind of weird for the humor. Some of it works, some doesn't. And while I don't like the idea of dragging a YouTube skit out into a season of television, or maybe even a series if it gets renewed for season 2, they at least do try to have characters and a story, but they make some decisions that I think are pretty baffling considering where the show seems like it's going to go. Of course, when you end so abruptly, you have a bunch of open threads. So this is just speculation, but it seems like it's setting certain things up in pretty questionable ways. I think the biggest failing of the show is they don't ever really have Russell take accountability for what he's doing or his past actions. He kind of just blames God or fate the whole time. And then near the end of the season, they do some weird stuff with the relationships that is going to make things very strange later if they continue in the direction they're currently going. Let's just get into it so I can stop trying to talk around what I want to say. So the plot is that Russ Holiday, quarterback for Oregon, was half a yard away from winning the national title against Georgia, dropped the ball early celebrating. Georgia ran it all the way back and won. And then he was pissed off because some cancer kid wanted his autograph, and he told the kid's dad essentially to fuck off. So they got into a fight and knocked the kid in the wheelchair over. A whole fiasco. 6 years later, obviously he's 28. He's kind of a degenerate. He's hanging out with Hawk Tua. And yes, it actually is the Hawk Tua girl in the show. He's going to get a chance to the XFL, but then the cancer kid dies. So the bad PR makes him cut his contract. His relationship with his dad is on the rocks, and he just kind of hits the road. He takes his dad's makeup and stuff and goes to do an open tryout for the South Georgia Catfish, or like your fictional SEC team coached by Steve Zahn. So he bullshits his way in with the makeup from his dad, who works in Hollywood as a makeup artist, and he calls himself Chad Powers, just like the Eli Manning skit. He actually ends up getting the backup job and befriending the mascot Danny. So going into the first game, he's the backup. The team is struggling. He tries to talk to Coach Jake to put him in the game. Jake Hudson's daughter Ricky is also one of the coaches, and her and Chad kind of have chemistry. And that's a really weird thing this show does, is you have one female football coach and it seems like she wants to fuck the quarterback. And the rest of the season really is just kind of contingent on Danny and Chad, or Danny and Russ, doing the makeup so that he can be Chad. He gets back into football shape. You have a little bit of drama surrounding the coaching and the pressure from the NIL funders or the boosters. And they play in the SECs. So you see them play teams like Ole Miss, Tennessee. The season ends really abruptly before the Georgia game. And apparently they actually filmed the team running out in Sanford Stadium, and they asked the crowd to boo him, which is pretty cool. But where the show really gets weird is like Danny intentionally hurts the backup quarterback so that Chad can get in the game. Obviously it works out, but still a messed up thing to do. When they go to Tennessee, he runs out of glue. He goes to the hospital and is acting like kind of a dick. They're going to buy glue at like a Walgreens, and they steal it from a guy who hasn't been to a game since his dad died or whatever tragic story. And then the second to last episode, when he's in his normal outfit as Russ, he hooks up with this woman at the bar, not knowing who it is, and it turns out to be the coach's wife. So then he meets the coach's wife again for a game day thing as Chad, and she doesn't recognize him, but it causes a whole bunch of drama. And the last episode, Ricky, the daughter that he was kind of gonna have a thing with as Chad, figures out that he was Russ and what he's done, and that he slept with her mom. So now the show's on a trajectory where if Ricky and Chad / Russ do get together, he's gonna have boned her mom. Very weird shit that they do. And what the show really is kind of missing is the moment where Russ stops making excuses and just says, you know, the things that happened to me in life were my fault or extensions of my behavior. Like every time that the conversation comes up in the latter half of the season with Danny, he says that whenever Russ is getting close to things being good, God fists his asshole. Like, yeah, it's mildly amusing in the way that he's phrasing it and behaving. But even his fumble with the 1 yard line in the national title, he says like the wind blew it out of his hands. When he's sleeping sleeps with the coach's wife. He says Russ did it. You know, everything that happens, he just makes an excuse for. And the show doesn't do the thing where it acknowledges it, because even in the finale, he tries to give the makeup back to his dad and kind of stop the charade. And his dad's like, well, you look happy. Can't you just keep going? And it's like, yeah, fuck everybody else, all the coaches that you lied to, all your teammates that you lied to. Like, if it makes you happy and you get a second chance, then fuck everybody. And it's kind of a bizarre message because it's played as like a heartfelt moment that him and his dad are reconciling, but no one acknowledges it except for Ricky. And I can't even tell if the show is trying to portray Ricky as being kind of a bitch about it. I didn't think she was. I thought she was completely right, because she goes off on him when he acknowledges that he's Chad and Russ in the finale, because she figures it out. And she's like, you're a psycho and a loser. And she slaps him. And she's like super pissed off, as you would be. And even when she says, if you come near the team, I'm going to tell everyone, he says you won't, because it would get your dad fired. It would get the program shut down. It would end the season. The program would get the death penalty. It would ruin everything. And she's just like, I fucking hate, which is the correct response. But to me, it's kind of what makes it weird, is like, he knows all the ramifications of what he's done. Then you put that right after the moment where his dad's like, well, you seem happy, you should keep going. Very strange. And then they have some plot lines that they kind of just give up on. Like, Ricky is sort of seen as like a Nepo hire, not really taken seriously as a coach. She picks a play that Chad audibles to in the first game and helps him win. And then it's never really brought up again. The stuff with the coach Jake and his wife is mainly in the background until it serves as the plot device to let him get exposed in the last couple episodes. So it doesn't really seem like that's headed anywhere. And it's not really built up beyond a couple phone calls, because they wanted to keep her off screen so that you get the twist of the lady that Russ hooked up with is his wife. It's very clearly why it's set up the way that it was. And because the season ends so abruptly, they're 5-0 going to Georgia. Chad no-showed for a couple of days between the coach's heart attack and the game because Ricky found out about him. And the backup Jerry has a meltdown when Chad shows up and gets the starting role still. And they're kind of setting him up to look like he's going to be a villain in season 2, but there's not really much there. He's just kind of the dorky backup all season. Overall, the show is just fine. It's a comedy, so you don't have to take it too seriously. But it is weird to see Russ be kind of this big asshole, and the show also wants you to root for him while he's also never taking accountability. The comedy is kind of hit and miss. It'll work for you or it won't. The good thing is it's 6 episodes, so it's probably 3.5 hours of content. It's not like a ton to get through. If you don't like it, you can crank it out in one afternoon. But yeah, I don't have too much more to say about it. I wish Glenn Powell would start taking better roles, because I do think he's a really good actor. One of the best parts in this season is he's having kind of a mental break, and he's going back and forth talking to Danny between the Russ and Chad personalities. And Danny's like, you're kind of freaking me out with this. And in a different movie, it would be like a schizophrenic horror type thing instead of played for comedy. And he's obviously been really good in other stuff. In Hitman, he got to do a wide variety of roles like this as well. I think he just like dressing up in costumes, honestly. It's fine. I wouldn't give it a strong dislike or like. I'd say watch an episode, and if you like episode 1, you'll probably be fine with the whole season. If you don't, I wouldn't say it changes too much. It's not worth watching for the compelling characters or anything. I'm gonna leave it there for this one. If you have seen the show, let me know what you think. Try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.